Welcome back to the Colorado Springs Business Podcast. My name is Andrew Hasley, and I am the host of the show. Today, we are sponsored by the Colorado Springs Business Podcast. So we have advertising space right here at the beginning where we can read a 15 to 30 second ad, an ad that you wrote, an ad script at the beginning of every episode. And you can purchase as many episodes as you want. 20 episodes is a month. We do 20 episodes an entire month. And yeah, so that's basically the ad right here. So if you'd like me promoting your business at the beginning of every episode or have ever many episodes you'd like, reach out to the show and we can make that happen. All right, so I'm going to introduce the guest today. The guest today is Richard Fleming, and he owns Sage Media out in Denver, and I'll let you talk a little bit about your business. Just in about a sentence or two, tell us what you do.
So I make movies that people use for learning. So imagine you watch Mad Men, but at the beginning of the season, you download a curriculum that corresponds with it, and you learn stuff along the way.
Ooh, I can't wait to get into that in the episode. All right, so I'm going to roll the intro music, and...
This is a show where we have real conversations with the business owners and entrepreneurs here in Colorado Springs, doing things in the community of Colorado Springs.
And that is the intro, but I know you're in Denver, which
Sounds good, though.
Which is close. You're not a Colorado Springs business, but I'm sure you do business in Colorado Springs and have done business in Colorado Springs. And also, as the show grows, I plan on having entrepreneurs that aren't even in Colorado Springs on the show, just to provide value to. It's kind of like a football team, how we're nationally syndicated, globally syndicated, but putting the team on the back.
Yeah. Well, we all share similar problems as entrepreneurs.
Yes. So let's get into a little bit about what you do in your business.
Yeah, so what I was saying is, this has been a constant thing. I used to work in marketing for a really long time, and what's funny is that using that principle that I would use for other small businesses on how to define your UVP and how to
UVP?
your unique value proposition, the
nice.
thing that you do better than 95% of the other groups, because you don't just want to be a plumber. You want to be a plumber who's on time. You don't just want to be an attorney. So instead of getting confused with being a videographer, I was trying to clarify how we're really different. We're learning design experts matched with cognitive scientists matched with filmmakers. So that if you look at it on a Venn diagram, we're in the center of that.
Nice.
So different companies will hire us for complex soft skills. So soft skill is anything that's hard skill, something that's fixing a car, installing a brake pad, something that's almost instructional and you can do it linearly. Soft skill is more complicated, integrated. When you think about sales training, it's not just sell better. You have elements of negotiation. You have elements of etiquette, ethics, project management, communication, a lot of different skills you have to synthesize into one cohesive strategy. So we create content that's like an Aesop fable or that's analogous to the learning points that you want to translate. Some things are very hard for people to understand, or they may understand them at a cognitive level, but not an emotional level. So therefore you lose them in getting motivated to actually take action. So we create they're indistinguishable from what you see on TV.
So do you take kind of the hero's journey?
So
do you utilize that?
Yeah, I mean, monomyth is a feature for certain kinds of brands, but we're not tied to any kind of structure. I mean, I'm very big into storytelling design. The idea that there's one mythic structure that follows everything it's kind of bollocks, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I love Joseph Campbell. He's
I was
awesome.
about to say.
But neuroscience immediately disproves it. If you read African stories or Mexican folktale, it's radically different. It immediately disproves it.
What's some of the differences?
Well, just in terms of the idea that you have, right? So in the hero's journey, there are very specific compartments that each category falls into. Really what he was doing was not to say this is the one, size fits all, but to say that there are commonalities among culture. But they're just different. You have different importances. Watch Japanese cinema and compare it to American films, radically different themes. You have power themes in America that are more about strategy in Japanese anime or Japanese cinema. They have overlap. You watch films from the Czech Republic in the 1970s, and it's very, very different kind of themes and references and meaning. You wouldn't expect it to see, or it'd seem unfamiliar otherwise.
So you create these badass videos for people, essentially.
Yeah, and I think the idea is a lot of the companies are global. So they have like multiple different kinds of cultural influence. So, some of our clients have branches in Hyderabad, India. And it's like, so how do you make a training film in the US that caters to both the North American branch and the Asian branch and the Indian branch? Like how, you have to reconcile those things. So we think about universal themes. So an example of something that would be universally respected and appreciated or leveraged is politeness. Politeness is universal, irrespective of the culture that you're from. And the funny thing is that we actually treat devices with politeness, like computers and iPads and iPods and stuff. We don't think we do, but there's actually like a significant evidence about
anger.
Yeah,
like people cuss at their phones, like it knows what it's doing.
Yeah, because you treat it like it's a real person. And so we're tapping into a lot of that and saying, well, how does that interface with a story? How does that interface with a training or with UX UI if you're looking at it from a design perspective? This is a learning experience. So it's not just in isolation of watch a movie and then boom, you have the knowledge. It's integrating different aspects of education to say, well, there's no such thing as a learning style. There are learning preferences, and I'm happy to just explain the difference because I know some people are like, what? There are learning styles, but there aren't.
Okay.
Meaning like, there's nothing inherent about reading that makes it easier for you to imbibe an understanding of information than say like listening to an audiobook of it. You may just be bad at reading if that's the case. And scientists have not been able to distinguish that. So early when learning styles came out, they found that people just had inadequacies. But they attributed that to, that's actually what they prefer, how their brain's wired. But you don't remember more like objectively from an audio presentation or a video presentation than you do, say, like,
Is it about equal?
So it's actually far more complex than that, and that it's a integration of multiple kinds of learning exposure. So you don't just want to limit like PowerPoint and just say that's the only way you do things.
It's kind of saying you're like leaving like things on the table by dismissing this, like, oh, I am not a reader by nature. So I can't do it.
Right. Yeah. And so I remember going to this this vocational school for television, and they were like, yeah, I don't read very well. So what do I do? And it was like, you learn to read.
Yeah.
I mean, because unfortunately you got a manual and you have to do like a quick, Control F to find something in a PDF online. You're not going through your lynda.com course being like, what was the function and how do I turn it on this camera? You have to find it quickly. So you have to be able to read as a reference. Otherwise you're screwed.
There's just inadequacies that you haven't learned yet or spent the time into, essentially.
Yeah. And everything is like, the beauty of this is like intelligence is a flexible protein.
It's very plastic.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of people think that, IQ is this like, that's it, that's determined, you're done. But no, you have a lot of room for development. And so part of the encouragement is to say, don't get fixated on that, actually focus on.
What about genetics? Don't you think people have different limits?
Yeah. I mean, genetics, is the way I've heard it put that I like is it's like your starting point on the race, but like there's a lot more you can do.
Yeah.
And then assuming that you don't have some, really grievous disadvantage or disease or genetic, genetic mutation that puts you at a disadvantage, for all intents and purposes, there really isn't that much of a limit.
I feel it. Yeah. I think I get that. Yeah.
Well, because I think it was Jeff Colvin's book, Talent is Overrated, that really ruined my life. I was like 9:00 at night. I'm like, I'll just read a chapter. 4:00 in the morning, I'm still reading this fucking book. I'm like, oh my God, it ruined my life. Well, because it was so much about this is it. Like you can really work as hard as you want. Now I see talent shows where people are juggling Rubik's cubes and then they become fully formed, and you're like, I used to think that's amazing, and now in my brain I'm like, oh, that guy just spent way too much time.
Yeah, okay, yeah. No, for sure.
It's not a bad thing, but it's just you could apply yourself in any respect, which I think is really powerful.
And especially if you narrow it down, like some crazy stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that's been the biggest challenge when you talk about entrepreneurship or storytelling specifically, because it's been hard to find a mentor. And you can read a lot of interesting books on business development. I remember reading a bunch of sales books, and now I'm into high market sales. And all of the stuff I learned was for like low dollar amounts, like selling Cutco. Like I sold Cutco knives when I was in college, and it was great. And I learned a lot. And then all the books about that were very much like retail store environment. How do you get a quick sale? How do you get people? You close the sale means you get the purchase. But when you're dealing with high contracts, you're selling over $15,000 services. That's your cheapest item. Now you're getting into like, that doesn't work. Closing actually leads to fewer sales. Yeah.
What do you mean?
So we are having an exchange, and I say, yeah, where can I send this? And I get your address, and I start filling it out in the order form. That works if I'm selling you a widget. That's $15. It's like you're already kind of in it.
There's no order form for bigger things.
Not in the same way. You have stakeholders, you have committees, you have people that are buying. They're like, well, I can't actually sign on that line. I physically don't have the power. Like, you can use my signature. It's not going to go anywhere. So I need to bring it to my boss, and the boss is going to review it and in 5 minutes go, yep, no, thanks. We're good, because the value prop is not what I want. So now we have to completely pitch differently, and you have to build relationships, which takes more time, which puts your sales velocity, the lead to close ratio, at a much like longer stint. So it's just a new way of looking at stuff. So that's kind of like my journey and my excitement is figuring out more about like how to systematize that. But
how have you gone about learning that?
So the mind-blowing thing for me was marketing automation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if I could, for people that are in my position that are selling high-end services or that require a long nurture time, marketing automation's it. It saved me like 15 hours a week.
And marketing automation and automation in general has been a theme with a lot of these episodes over the last week and a half.
I mean, I'm seeing it more. And there's an intelligent way to do it. It's not new. I mean, this comes back from like direct response marketing. I mean, even back in the 80s, they had some kind of iterations of it. It's customer journey applied, you know, in some kind of systematic way.
And I was thinking about figuring out how to take the customer journey, the buyer's journey, and the hero's journey.
I put them, that's ours.
And try to mix it together. And I was going to write like a PDF for it.
That's great. No, but it's funny you mentioned that, because we just did that. I used a Milanote, which is like a kind of a graphic. It's an Evernote for creatives.
Okay.
And I built the actual stages, because we have a 90-day onboarding. Because going to my website and being like, oh yeah, I think I understand what you do, doesn't convert you. You need a lengthy explanation, and even things like the learning styles thing. We're dealing with people that still believe hardcore. They've designed training around learning styles, and then they're wondering why they actually saw a decrease in productivity, a decrease in sales, a decrease, you know, in effectiveness, is because they can't explain it or track it. They're like, oh, it must be a fluke.
So what's the difference between the learning style approach of making videos and your approach?
So basically, you know, the summary I would say is you have to engage both the hearts and minds of people. The most egregious misunderstanding I think people have is that they believe that they are rational and that they make decisions on a rational basis.
Yeah.
We make decisions on an emotional basis, and then we justify them with logic.
Okay.
And knowing that has made all the difference. I mean, really, it's almost upsetting. You know, and I think that I tell people that I live drama in my work, not in my life. And so I think the way my relationships with people unfold is, you know, a lot more, you know, I don't react as aggressively. I take time before I respond. I make sure that I'm aware of my emotional state. But
and not letting your monkey brain control you.
Right. But in marketing and in sales, it's entirely that. It's saying, you know, it's activating that. And in some ways, you know, you're not trying to take them hostage, but you want to give a very clear reason why this is important. And I don't think of it as, I think the problem with these kinds of conversations is it sounds like you're trying to manipulate people into buying, and it isn't. It's trying to say, I'm presenting information in a way that makes it more memorable or applicable to your life. If it isn't applicable, you're not going to buy anyway. Knowing that there's like communities in underdeveloped nations that don't have clean water doesn't necessarily change my life in purchasing the kind of water filter I'm purchasing, but it does have, you know, if I'm philanthropic, it may, but if I'm not aligned to philanthropy, then I'm already not a customer. So it doesn't do anything for my life. What I tell people is media can't change your moral code.
You can't sell the unsellable.
Right. You can't make people psychopaths by having them play violent video games. Doesn't work.
No, yeah.
And so I'll just end that debate right now.
Yeah. I was about to say, I don't even have any commentary on that debate anyways.
I know. Well, it comes up a lot. It's like cell phones causing cancer. It's like endless.
Yeah, I mean, but do they?
They don't.
Okay. Yeah. Alcohol causes cancer.
There's a lot of like interesting stuff about like the health world coming out, and I'm trying not to be like super dogmatic about it, but I think I'm very protective of the media space because I think storytelling is so important. I will go out and say that my feeling is that it's how we make sense of our place in the universe is through narrative and narratization.
So starting from the beginning before you got into Sage Media, what does that look like?
I started in public access, man. I was truck driver, a auto mechanic, 100 different jobs. And I was like, I just want to make movies. And I thought I would try to build a career and a trade to pay for that. Because, the business of movies is, God, you'd be better off just gambling. Like literally, you'd have a better chance going to Vegas and just spending all your money than investing in a film. It's the worst investment.
Especially self-funded film? Is that
I
what
mean,
you're saying?
anything, honestly. Like,
or even like getting like funding from like big people.
Even Hollywood does not know how to make its successes another success. They don't. That's why they're stuck on franchises, because at least they have some kind of strategy. But it looks they're looking at the entire campaign, meaning they're not looking at an isolated film. Otherwise, it'd scare the crap out of them. And even still, they're making movies like they're doing another 47 Ronin reboot or a sequel, and that movie lost like $96 million.
It's crazy. I seen that movie on Christmas in theaters, and I don't remember any of it.
I mean, it bombed, and
I literally can't recall one scene, and I watched it.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, that when William Goldman, who wrote Princess Bride and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Stephen King's Misery for film, he has this great quote where he just says, "Nobody knows anything." Yeah. And he doesn't mean it to be like they're faking. He just means they actually have no idea. Like, why was Titanic successful? No idea. Why was, the Marvel Enterprise successful? No idea. Why is DC not as successful? No idea. Yet, Joker.
And what's crazy, if you look at some of the DC movies, there's so much higher quality in like cinema. From my opinion, I guess that's subjective, but
yeah.
But I think there's just, I don't know. There's something more that I love about him. I can't really nail it, but
well, and this is like, I think the entire conversation is about how do you deal with a complex behavior? How do you systematize it, make it simpler? And there's this wonderful behavioral economist, Danny Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for a lot of his research, but he has this one saying about how even simplified predictive models are better than experts, the opinion of experts. So if you asked like Spielberg and David Lynch and all these people what their opinion of this, whether or not a film was going to be successful, they could give you a prediction, and they would be worse than if you just had a random or simple predictive model that you were able to use, like based on the number of popcorn sales or the weather or something really weird. Like it doesn't have to be directly related even to movies. Which a lot of like vintners and wine growers know. Like there are other extenuating circumstances or conditions that influence something you wouldn't think of.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm reading about how employee satisfaction can be directly linked. It's inversely proportional to the number of blogs that they have, which is
indirectly or directly.
It's so inversely. So basically, the more blogs they have, the worse their satisfaction is.
Okay.
And how they park their car, like how many are front facing versus rear facing. Oh,
they're just showing how ridiculous statistics are.
No, actually not. Like it has legitimate influence.
Okay.
And so there's, the idea.
Oh, wow.
It's
all
not
these
just
little small things. Yeah.
Small things, but because there are justifications and narratives for it, you don't know necessarily which narrative is the most significant. So the thing is, most people are really bad at statistics. So I think I have to qualify that by being like, I'm not just throwing it out there like, oh, we found out how many people are Sagittariuses that left their work.
And it was a correlation, not a causation.
Right. And this is still correlation, but it's significant. It has influence. Like you don't want to discount the correlation because there's a symptom involved. But if I could make a prediction that's accurate most of the time based on that, then you're like, well, at least that signifies that I can tell that they're dissatisfied. Because you saying, are you guys happy with your work? They're not going to give you an honest answer. But you can tell through other metrics, and that's a more complicated conversation. But I just thought it was interesting that an influence would be the number of blogs they have. And,
and those small things that we're just learning right now. There's a show on Sci-Fi Channel, or I can't remember the name of it, but it's placed in the future. And one of the technologies that some of the enemies use is being able to predict the future based off of these small little things. Like they have like a bunch of minds that are put together, and they use that computing power to really predict things very accurately. Yeah. Based on these little small, but all like a compilation of these small things, like really figuring it out.
Freakonomics covered that a lot. And
really?
Super Freakonomics. Yeah. It was like, how do you identify a terrorist? And it was like, do they have a life insurance policy? And they found that most of them didn't. Which was weird to me.
That's funny.
It was like, and you're like, so having one like made you less of a red flag to the CIA. And
that's weird because having a life insurance policy you might want to do that if you're going to do something crazy that you might end your life with.
But this is why it's so weird.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and that's the thing where like, I think Rory Sutherland, who's a marketer for Ogilvy, talks a lot about this, where we are a society that puts too much emphasis on what we think is rational and sound. And it completely discounts the experiential. I can't tell you why, but I know for a fact that if you put cute animals on your website, you will sell astronomically more than not.
Okay.
It's just like, yeah.
So
weird.
we're going to get a stuffed animal right
totally
here.
The cuter, the better.
Yeah.
But like weird stuff like that. Like we don't know why it works. Like how does it relate to sales? But yeah.
And Sam Walton really tapped into that a lot. He's the one that really innovated on the putting the racks right there on the, when you're checking out, because that has a lot of psychological significance as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I said we weren't like twisting it to manipulate people, but it sounds very much like we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have got that Reese's candy bar.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is like, and when I walk into a grocery store, I turn to the left. I always like walk left, just like I try to do things that resist that mindset. And,
oh yeah.
But at the same time, it's like
there is some very manipulative people out there that are using it for evil.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, and I think what I get frustrated with is you acclimate to a lot of that stuff. What you don't acclimate to is storytelling. I think that's part of the reason why I'm invested in it, is because I see the good it can do. And for the longest time, I had this battle in my mind about, is it valuable, or is this just some narrative I'm telling myself? Like, does it tangibly change lives, or have I been drinking the Kool-Aid for too long? And thankfully, like I'm in this field called neurocinematics that measures the impact of media on the brain neurologically, to kind of see like, is this good? And so in that vein, like there are movies I don't watch anymore. Like I don't, a lot of like horror films or graphic violence is like, it does actually impact you. And so it's like, well, I don't need that in my life no more than I need, fast food in my life.
It's I think are quickly learning as a society, as a humanity, that the way we've only learned over the last 50 to 100 years about like taking physical health seriously, now we have to really consider taking like, the mental health side, the diet, the media diet kind of,
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like I can't tell you how many kids that I hear about, like from, relatives and friends that have children that are like, yeah, they're 6 years old and they're not potty trained, or they have like major behavioral issues. They're bullying, or they've got speech impediments. I'm like, how many hours are they on devices? And like, oh, well, that shouldn't have anything to do with it. But it's like, no, how many hours are they on the devices? And you find out like it's significant. And, toddler brains resist learning from two-dimensional surfaces. So the idea that you're like, oh, it's an educational program. Sorry. Like dialogic, talking to your kids is like the best way to really interact with them. And so you have to purge that from their brains, because you'll notice all sorts of stuff like rages or meltdowns and stuff that like is over the top. They withdraw. They're more isolated. They stop making friends. They stop, interacting with.
But Dr. Phil was covering this before social media was even.
I know. Well, and this is the thing where like it's trying not to be like scare tactic. It's more like you can. I mean, there's a book called Resetting Your Child's Brain, and it's a great way to just be like, okay, we're gonna wean them off, because you can get media withdrawal from it.
And I mean, I guess it was before social media, but there was still TV. Like, I don't know. Yeah. It was very common for lots of people. Then I don't know about now, probably even more or the same, 6 to 8 hours of watching TV every single day. Like, that's crazy.
That was when they were the tubes too. So they got the electron like firing in your face.
Yeah.
They like, use the cathode ray tubes.
Yeah. So check that real quick. Check that. Awesome. So how did you start Sage Media, and what has been some of your reasons why you think that you've been able to have success with it?
Okay.
I guess that's a two-part question.
So I started Sage Media with another guy who was running a similar production company. I was just doing small business promotional videos, so trying to get people to sell their product or service better. And I used video as a tool for that. And it was great. I was making good money. I was making dozens of brands successful every year. And something felt off about it. And when we met at some filmmaking group, I think we just shared the same kind of frustrations around what clients thought videos should be, and it was tiresome trying to educate people on the minutia of it. You get a client to come in and say, well, I want to see the product like this. And it's like, it's a lifestyle piece. And then they would be like, yeah, but I want to see it like in a car commercial. And you're thinking, okay, I don't have time to explain to you the 10 years it took me to learn that car commercials don't sell more cars. Like, get over it. Like you don't have that kind of product. You're not about brand awareness in the zeitgeist, but no one's buying. I mean, what's the last Kia commercial you saw? And can you tell me what the model was that they were featuring? Absolutely not. And you're not even aware it's Kia, right? Like, this is the problem. So you're trying to teach them advertising.
All I think of is really cool drone footage.
All of them have really cool drone footage. That's the thing. It's like, it becomes like, real estate videos. It's like, so part of the problem was thinking it was tiresome trying to educate clients about advertising when it was not their strong suit. But as business owners, they want to have their hand in the business. They just didn't know how to get away from it. So we started working on some stuff. We were looking at doing kind of a high risk ad agency where we basically just tell people to, like, this is what you need. I don't care if it's what you want. Like, this is going to make you millions, so shut up and just do it.
Okay.
Because the thing is, like, I'm an expert. Once you master a craft, you're like, this is what I'm really good at. You don't want people being like, I don't know anything about it, and I'm going to just pull it apart. Like, it just takes so much of your time, and
sure.
you watch that dollar amount just drain and drain and drain, and small businesses aren't spending a ton of money. So we were getting together to brainstorm an agency that would remove all of this barrier for people, that we wouldn't even that clients wouldn't have to worry themselves about it. They would just say, here's my business objective, make me money. And I'm seeing agencies pop up like that. There's a company that scaled one firm from $2 million in sales to a year, $2 million a year in sales to $24 million a year in sales.
Nice. Just
through videos that were done incrementally through market automation.
And market automation, yes.
See, we're getting all the way back to that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell you on marketing automation, but
I want to learn more about it.
It's we'll get into it. I mean, it really did change my business and how I do it. But the thing with Sage Media was more like, we got together and we're working on a project. Some client said, hey, I have a training film. Have you done those before? And we're like, no, but it's not that hard to figure out. We did it, and the results were ridiculous. Like, the amount of change, and they were like, this is like watching a movie. And we're like, well, isn't this how they're done? Like, I hadn't really been familiar with
Oh, nice.
So they're like, no, this is what we had like 3 years ago. And you're watching
Usually
it like,
they're cheesy.
Oh my God, they're terrible.
Yeah.
and like legal has a whole thing. And part of it is because the training teams and the legal team believes that the way people learn is to tell them what they need to know. And that's not how this works. And in film, it's all about what's not being said. It's between the lines. It's subtext. So, Walter White having an exchange with Skylar is a very different interaction from him.
They really sold. I wonder how many increases of meth dealers happened because of Breaking Bad.
Or how many of them are now like following protocol.
Yeah.
But it's really,
that's how powerful it is. I really had that belief, like, this is, that's going to have some, residual effect, and maybe it's going to even see some kids that are in it, maybe watch that and, want to be a Hank or something, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the truth is it's aligned to their moral code. So they'll go to their respective places.
Yes. And that's what you do. Instead of focusing on the styles, that helps people align to their own moral codes within the videos you create.
Right. So I compare it to, like, if you want to learn a language, I can tell you all of the conditions that will optimize your chances of success. Right. But if you're just like, well, I do it an hour before I go to bed, that's not enough. Then doing these other things, listening to programs in that language, or communicating with people, or labeling things, or going about your day, like just naming different things in your head, getting that to be autonomic. So because the trick with learning is you have to get your brain out of the way. Consciousness interferes with learning. So the more you can make it rote and autonomic, like an athlete does on the field, they're not thinking.
Well, the
about
more
the
you
play.
do it, the more it becomes autonomic.
Yeah.
That actually, you can see that visually in the brain, I think.
Yes, and it moves. It physically moves in the brain. You can, when you're watching the activity. So you can, because it's less significant that you pay attention. But if you're thinking about translating, like, I constantly have to be like, what is cup in Japanese?
Yeah.
Happens to be really easy in Japanese, but
is it kupo?
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Kopu.
Was I right? Really?
Yes.
I know some of the. Well, that was a pretty good guess, dude. Yeah. I know some Japanese words. I think there's a name for it when words hadn't been created, or like they don't translate really.
Katakana.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a written language just for foreign words. And they use it in advertising now to be like, it's chic and sexy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically, like I'm trying to get people to shut off their brains in that context. And so we didn't know that at the time we did the first training film.
I'm gonna hit that real quick.
Yeah, no, fine. No,
All right, where were you at?
it was just like about like forming the business. The bottom line was like after the training film and the success of it, it started to spread, and I started researching more about, well, what's wrong with training films? Why are they like this? Why do they look like this? Why are they acted like this? And I came to find that the training industry globally spends $300 billion a year, and only 10% of training is effective. And you tell that to a person who's chief learning officer, head of learning, they're like, oh yeah, I know that. I'm like, you're okay with this?
I did some studies on the training stuff, and although that may be, there's obviously you are just innovating on the platform. When training videos like actually happened, like I know Microsoft started doing training videos. They went from like putting all their employees, like have them come to a space and all that stuff, and they saved like millions of dollars every single year. But you're saying that they could save millions more.
Yeah, I mean,
or make million more. That's the goal of it. Training videos to make better employees.
They should make more money for you. Yeah. Well, and everyone's terrified to find out if it's working. Executives want to know, but if you talk to HR and about learning analytics, they're terrified of it. I think partly because they were worried that if it comes back negative, that somehow they'll lose their job, and that's not how people work. I mean, maybe it's worked for them, and if that's so, then you're in a toxic culture and need to get out. But generally, I want to know if it's working. Yeah. So we always do a deep dive.
You got to know your numbers. That's a big part of automation.
Yeah.
Is knowing your numbers.
Yeah. I mean, and so like when my business partner is Kirkpatrick certified, so we go through from the very beginning and say, like, does this actually change behavior on the plant floor? Or does this change behavior in the office? And we know because we'll have criteria.
Is Kirkpatrick a neuro thing, a cognitive?
It's thing? Not. It's more of an investigative tool, kind of like XAPI XAPI is more data driven on that reflection, but it's still like you have to sort the data. It's a framework like Bloom's taxonomy. There are different ones, and even though these don't have, again,
you said like 3 different words that I've never heard before.
So Bloom's taxonomy is like a 6-part series that essentially organizes how people have information from like they recall it to they are synthesizing it. So I teach you a creative writing technique, and then you're able to apply it to a history paper or your cover letter. It's not creative writing, but you've taken principles of it and synthesized it into something new. Now, the critique of Bloom's taxonomy and a lot of these frameworks is that they're not scientifically vetted. But to my response, neither was AA. And AA works wonders for millions of people every year because it's experiential. So similarly, like just because it's not been vetted scientifically doesn't mean you throw it out. So Kirkpatrick is another one of those that says, did people like the training? Did they remember the training? Do they recall the training? In the field, and have they actually changed the behavior? Sorry, I skipped this. So there was the liked, recall, perform, and then like have the outcome. So like you have these like 4 different iterations. So my business partner is certified in that, and we use that framework when we're going through and actually talking through a training, which is, ultimately what do you want it to do? I can't tell you how many people they'll come and say, well, I want my learners to understand the importance of, and it's like, blah, blah. Okay. Like how do you measure understanding? And what do you determine as the metric of importance? Like it's immeasurable.
So what's the underlying problem they're solving if they say that, or wanting to solve actually?
So it's varied. It's all over the place. I think most of the time they don't know how to clarify what it is that's problematic or what behavior and what action and outcome would prove that the training was effective. They don't want it. It's hard to think that way. And really just because they're like, I don't know, I want them to understand the importance of, okay, but what does that look like?
I think someone, a friend, maybe even a mutual friend, she does kind of like what you do, but she's more in person. It's not a video automation. It's more of like I was just thinking as you were explaining your business. I was like, what if some businesses hire psychologists to come in and really diagnose those problems?
Yeah.
Or maybe you could work together with them to create films based on that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is because a lot of times the psychologists have one element of it, but they don't have the application, especially with regard to media. I mean, I was even watching some of the Harmon brothers, the guys that did the Squatty Potty and the poopery commercials, and they've got a learning academy, and it's awful.
Oh, really? Because they've been promoting it to me hardcore.
You watch it, and the guy's presenting, and I think it's green screened because it looks green screened, and behind him is a window, and people are moving around like poking each other and doing this weird shit, and you're like, I can't pay attention to anything he's saying because there's all this cognitive load. There's all this demand on my mental RAM that I'm like forgetting what he's saying. It's a terrible idea. Like, minimize the distractions, minimize the focus. Don't have all these flashy graphics popping up because, again, they chip away at that RAM.
What they were doing was what they did best and applying it to a learning thing, which is what you do best.
Right. And this happens all the time. Donald Miller's another one. Donald Miller has great stuff when you want to talk to him about small business marketing. The minute he opens his mouth about corporate training, you're like, dude, you're in over your head.
Yeah.
And so I see this a lot with companies trying to pivot. And so for us, it was about, this is a lifelong investment. I've always felt that storytelling enriched people's lives.
Donald Miller is
he's creeping into corporate learning.
Who's that?
The story brand guy.
That's what I thought. when you said that, yeah. Okay, yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
you're fine.
My brain was like, I know that name.
Well, and
I read that book.
I used to subscribe to his stuff, and then I got a video that was like, when should you fire somebody? And I was like, oh God, every red flag came out of his mouth, and I was like, this is a liability, buddy. Like, stop talking.
Yeah.
Like, just do what you do really well. This is not your foray. But that's unfortunate because people think it's easy because people spend a lot of money in the corporate sphere, and because there's a high demand. But again, if only 10% is effective, is that saying that they just don't care for it to be more effective, or is that saying that there is something systemically wrong with the way training is being done? And we're still kind of piecing it out. And I think it's going to shift. I think as people are staying home more, as people are following their own learning trajectories, you're going to get a lot more demand. I'm already seeing it that doing Zoom calls with your phone or doing online learning with your phone and crappier cameras is no longer cutting it. People, since COVID, the demand for aesthetics in learning has skyrocketed.
Okay.
And it's huge. So it's something I would just like offer.
I could imagine, like how we didn't always have living rooms, we didn't always have like all these extra rooms in our houses. I could imagine having a video room and like down the line where you go and everything's set up.
That's interesting.
It would look like this a little bit.
Yeah.
And everyone has a video room in their house so that they could, just be ready for it. Huh. Yeah. Duncan Trussell. I don't know if you know who he is.
I don't.
He gave me that idea on one of his podcasts.
Okay.
He's a very eccentric thinker.
It reminds me it's like Judge Dredd stuff. It's just out there, like the video call.
Yeah.
The giant TV.
Or Pokemon. There wasn't like a giant TV, but Pokemon. I remember Ash would talk to his mom on a little video machine, and those video machines were like phone booths in every building. Yeah. So yeah.
Huh.
So there was one question I wanted. Oh yes, the marketing automation. Let's dive into that.
Okay. Yeah. So I should preface this by saying that I had like a really weird inner ear infection. This is like way too much information, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. And it messed up my balance like really bad. I was on a film shoot and I actually had to call it and had my the EP take over. Did an awesome job and we got what we needed. But I had actual vertigo, which I'd never had.
Okay.
And to be fair, I apologize to anyone who has it. I didn't think it was like a legitimate thing. It's kind of like when people talk about migraines and like, oh, isn't it just like a headache? And people with migraines are like, no, like it's crippling. It was like that. It was absolutely like unnerving and life-changing. So I went to the doctor and they prescribed me a bunch of steroids to help because they thought it was basically a virus that just was nibbling on my ear nerve. So for about 3 weeks, I was incredibly productive. Like I was reading.
Because of the steroids?
I guess so, because I was like, man, my reading comprehension has skyrocketed.
Whoa.
And so because I didn't get the energy surge or anything else that people talk about. I didn't have any like nausea or whatever. I just was like, all my books would just become fascinating. And so I read like 10 books on this, and it was around marketing automation. So that's what I'm prefacing this. I was in some Superman, learning
Limitless
mode.
Zone.
Yes, all roided out.
Let me cut that clip right there.
Oh my God, it was so weird. That'll be the promo piece.
All roided out. That's the name of the episode.
So yeah, and basically, I found a couple books that were really helpful, and I've been using Infusionsoft, which is the marketing automation tool that I use. It's basically Salesforce beats MailChimp. meets PayPal. Like you can do billing, it's a CRM. I was using Salesforce and it was just astronomically expensive. So I was able to take all of my contacts, actually export them right out of Salesforce, import them into Infusionsoft. I also sell products online, like online learning. So we have Sage Media, and then I have a separate company called Sage Academy, which is the cheaper version of our methodology.
But it teaches you how to do it yourself?
It's basically like tools that facilitators can use to run their own badass facilitation.
So
you can buy my movie. And
so video producers might be interested if they want to take their direction of their company in that direction.
So not that necessarily.
Okay.
It's mainly like if you're a trainer, facilitator, and you want to, I want to run a course on bystander intervention and I don't have good media. And so we have like Hollywood quality films with didactic talking head videos, with experiential activities, with a facilitator script that you can read to sound like an awesome presenter.
Yeah.
So,
and does that actually convert to sometimes people getting this and then just hiring you instead?
Not really.
Okay.
It's really because it's like no.
You wouldn't want that because that would be like the software isn't really working.
Well, that and it's just not necessary because the tools are so effective. It solves their problem immediately, and also like not many people are going to want to spend $100,000 to $500,000.
They're two different clients essentially.
Because it's just like it's anti-harassment training. Like the people I'm competing with free. So like if I can get somebody to use a tool that actually works, because I don't know if you know this, but anti-harassment training actually makes people more sexist, not less. So
and that's an interesting fact.
Same thing with racial sensitivity training, makes people more racist.
So how do you go about that then?
So,
you don't?
No, you do. And,
Okay.
and we did we're going to work on a diversity, equity, and inclusion piece, but we did for the anti-harassment, and it does work.
Okay.
It's a long conversation, but I'll tell you that the short end of it is self-determination theory, motivation models. So imagine what would anti-harassment training look like that would make, white men clamor to take it? They would be like, I actually need this in my life, not telling them about how they're all latent perverts and, that they're the problem and it's systemic around men. Like there's a number of things that compliance pits it against the learning. Like if you walk in and someone just immediately starts yelling about how you're racist and you're like, I just got here.
There's still emotion.
Yeah. And it's also like, I can't help be an advocate until I understand what's at play, and just immediately trying to break me down is not necessarily the best way to convert me to your cause. And a lot of training is designed that way because they think it's impactful.
It's kind of like if you want to teach someone, if you punch them, that's not going to help them learn.
Right. It deters them from doing certain things.
It's going to make them want to punch you back instead of actually understand that you're angry.
So there's a lot of what's in it for me from that perspective, and I think that our demo really helps. That they really appreciate that because they get value. Like I like the course. I like taking the course. It's not about being like, oh, here we go, another anti-harassment. It's more like I want to learn how to communicate about very difficult issues with my team. I want to be able to diffuse conflict without calling management and not making it awkward where I have to be like, John, when you do this is really upsetting to me. And I tell him this whole story versus just being like, yeah, when you pull out the chair for the only woman in the conference room, was that a little weird? And he's like, actually, it was really weird. Like, I just wanted to bring that up, man. And then you're like vetting for John because John's he's not a Harvey Weinstein incarnate. Like you're not going to convert him. So that's part of why, but it's
kind of like with the narrative piece, like you can have an anti-hero or you can sympathize with them a little bit. That's what it kind of does, I guess.
And also just like that we're not this binary kind of situation. Human behavior is really complex. Social dynamics are really complex. What you do, you may be operating and you may be an absolutely stellar person and had no idea that you were saying something that someone else got offended by. So I do a lot with religious history. And I was talking to somebody and I mentioned the word Jew. Like, if you're Jewish, like that's how you refer. And this person got offended. And you're like, what? Like you got offended? Like if I said I was Catholic, would you be like, oh, like don't say that word.
You cath?
Right. So it was such a bizarre thing of like them thinking, and that could be that stuff like that gets reported to HR. And the person's like, are they Jewish? And like, well, I don't know. That has something to do with like using the word, and like Jew is not like or Jewish is not even like a epithet. It's not something.
It's not universally known as
it's
something
not slurred.
bad.
No, of course not. It's like how people identify. Both
if you watch South Park though, and that's the only way you really heard it was the way Cartman refers to Kyle.
Sure. Well, and I think that's the context of like where this where people talk about worrying about PC. It's like you are not able to defend against what's considered like this overly politically correct culture unless you can confront it directly and talk about it. And that's the way to talk about it. is to have these tools. So we built these tools in so that you can develop your own personalized strategy and say, you know what, I know how I would communicate, and this would be good for me. And you can actually envision the entire landscape of how you'd want to have that conversation with somebody. And it's just great. Like, I mean, people have used it outside. They've used it in their romantic relationships. They've used it with their kids. It's got like breathing techniques to help like turn off the autonomic nervous system so you don't get like hyperactivated.
What does the
training?
The training? Oh, wow.
It's a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really involved. That's why I'm like, it is the solution, because it's not just walking into a room and saying the right words.
And that's in the academy?
That's in the academy, yeah.
And so about the marketing automation,
I'm avoiding it at this point.
I noticed that. What are some of the techniques? Why is it so important? Why has it been so transformational?
All right. So this is just for, I'll just talk for Sage Media, because that's been the difficult conversion, right? Like I have a 6 month to 2 year sales cycle. They're very high end products. I don't think anybody listening on this is like even a viable candidate for it, but I think it's important that they may have their own similar service where they're trying to sell a high dollar amount. But even if you're not, I mean, it's almost easier if you're not. If you're selling like widgets or, plumbing services, like I mentioned, like that, you're in. The basic process, or the thought process is, once you've defined the customer journey or the sales journey, you need to find ways to offload the work involved so that you're not touching it every single day. Like, I have a friend who's a writer, and he would go to these book signings, get 50 or 60 contacts, and then write them emails. 50 or 60 people, he would write them emails about like, thanks for coming to the book signing. And then hopefully there's a call to action, but whatever he put in there was like, Jesus, man, like, I'm hoping that you actually backed off and wrote a small note, and then you gave him like 2 or 3 emails over time, which is still a ton more of his time that he's using, rather than one giant surge. But the idea that like you're going to convert someone with one email, or that you're going to convert them once they go to your website is really detrimental. I liken it to the dating process, that most people ask for the other person's hand in marriage immediately. They just walk up and are like, will you marry me? And instead of like, you see them on the street, you smile, you wave, and then one day you build up enough courage and you ask them to coffee, and then that leads to dates, and then you date for a while, you introduce them to your parents, then you get married, and that's the sale. And for a lot of people, that's the end of it. Now I'm married, I don't have to do any more work. And the reality is, no, you have to still nurture that relationship, go out, visit places, go take vacations, have children, maybe seek counseling if it's not going so well. Same thing applies in your customer journey. And that may look more like referrals, upsells, getting them to give testimonials.
I bet there's some courses out there of some guys who have done that for dating. Use marketing automation on dating.
Marketing automation, dating. That'd be great. So basically the analogy, I think, works pretty well, because you're trying to get people in the first conversation. So my business partner is a great salesman, and he would always say, like, when he was selling Yellow Book stuff, he would just say, I would always, every time I called him on the phone, cold call, my goal was to get the meeting. It was never to close, because sometimes people would want to close over the phone. Would just tell me how much it is, or yeah, I'm interested, like blah, blah, blah. He's like, nah, I just need the meeting. And he would withhold that energy and not sell for the purposes of getting the meeting, because then there's a lot more he could do, and he could pinpoint what it was that they needed. So I think that the idea of marketing automation is somehow being more robotic is a misnomer. It actually is a way for you to nourish and enrich the interactions you're currently having with your people by being more specific. So customer journey is a core element of that. You have to define the lily pads that lead somebody to making an end purchase. So an example for me, I want them to buy my video production services. Well, before they can do that, if someone just came with a wad of cash and said, I want your video production services, I would have to say, let's slow down. I need you to go through this guided clarity session. This clarity session will help define what the technology looks like that's going to be implemented, what the learning objectives will be solved, how much this is going to cost you, the timeline, everything else, and then deliver that. That's X amount of dollars. Before you go to the clarity session, then, there's blah, 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 whatever. You take a webinar, we have a one-on-one call, and you just keep going backwards all the way till you get the initial thing, which is you came to my website and you wanted to download this free checklist. So you gave me a name and email. That's it. Now you've got the name and email. You can put them into a funnel. Based on their behavior, you put them through different gates. If they do this, then put them here. If they don't, then put them there. That allows you to basically manage all of the behaviors that you want. Like if somebody unsubscribes, it likely means that they don't want your content anymore.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't buy from you. It just means that there are ways that you have to weight that and say, well, they said no because they don't have any money and they're not a viable candidate. So if someone comes to your website and they're not a good candidate, well, then what do you do with them? You just tell them no? See you get lost? No, you put them somewhere else. So maybe you have a reference where you say, hey, for financial services, a guy told me that he does, ultra high net worth. He says, but if somebody comes to me and says, I have $1,000 to invest, I don't want to even talk to him. So don't. But don't be mean. Just be like, have a simple calculator, a simple survey that says, what is the amount that you want to invest roughly? And be colloquial, be friendly. And if someone says $1,000, I'm not going to be like, get out of my office, leave now. You'd be like, okay, well, that's cool. Well, I got to go to my next meeting, but I really want to introduce you to this guy, Brian, who absolutely loves people who have $1,000 to invest. And then you become a resource and you just funnel it along and you never touch it. Marketing automation is all it is an online tool. It's like a web page builder that just does it for you. So you pick the things that you want, and then you have somebody, or you do it yourself. It's pretty intuitive. Engineer the email campaign, and you can do A/B testing, where I send out 2 emails to 10% of my markets, like 2 different 10% groups, and the winning one that has the highest open rate is the one that gets sent to the remaining 80%. So all this stuff is built in, and it's
so it works a lot like you would with a Facebook pixel.
Yeah, Facebook Pixel ties into it too. I mean, all of these things, Facebook Pixel is basically for you to be able to again, it's
get that information. Yeah,
get that information. And again, someone who goes to your site, I went to buy a card game for my son. He's young, he's like 4 years old, but he likes this game called Sleeping Queens.
Was he the one playing piano?
I think so.
He's 4 years old.
No, that was the demo.
Okay.
No, I know it was like Bach or something.
I was like, dang, dude.
No, he's not that good. He's terrible. No, but he wanted this game, and I wanted to get it for him. So I added to my shopping cart on Amazon, and then I got distracted. I didn't come back to it. They sent me an email, and were like, hey, it's time for you to buy this game. And I was like, I had seen other things pop up like collector's editions, and I was just kind of in the process of sorting it. But the fact that I had it in my shopping cart, what else was I going to do with it? So their point was like, buy it or get lost, like get it out of your cart. But they weren't like, I don't feel it was being manipulative. I think it was being like, well, you're standing in line. Please buy the product. And that's kind of the same thing. Like you want to be able to help people. They're here for that. Make it easy for them to make a purchase with you or to engage you. Most businesses confuse their customers. They don't tell them what they want them to do. I want you to schedule a call. I want you to, and scheduling a call is even like a weird double-edged sword where, why am I, like we used to have that on our website, and I'm going through a massive overhaul of mine because that was the CTA. The call to action was give us a call. What are they going to talk to us about? Like, really, what are they going to talk to us about? There's nothing to chat about. Like, I'm going to learn all about your business and then come to you with a proposal. No, I've got to convert them. I got to hook them in. And so I think marketing automation allows you to create a hook that engages someone to say, can you imagine a world in which blank happens? And you're like, that is exactly what I need. Like, yes. Simple analogy.
I had some imagine statements on my website.
It's great.
Imagine if having a 2-minute video, do this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recently bought a training calendar to learn how to do a backflip. One of my goals was to do a backflip before I was 40.
I seen that. Yeah. I actually had it in a note, learn how to do a backflip by a certain amount of time, like a few years ago, and I never went through with it. So I can relate to that.
Well, yes, I'm like very excited about it on day 5, and it's been fantastic. But the thing is, it's like 30 days, $30, and it's like, it's a no-brainer. The goal is, I want to know how to do a backflip. The guy's like, I will teach how to do a backflip, and my process is incremental, so you don't just have to do it, jump into it and nearly break your neck. So I'm like, the 2 things I want, it's a clear timeline, and it's incremental, it's transitional. Those are the 2 things I needed. And so it's like, why would he do anything else? And I don't care what the videos look like when you buy that thing. I mean, they're not that great, but it doesn't matter, because the point of it is like, what did I get for it? And then in the same way, it's like, if you are, I tried getting an auto quote recently through Yelp, and it was like some people, they were sending me all this different crap. Like, well, we've got a bunch of different services, and we've got some like, funding or auto loan stuff. And it's like, I just want you to look at the light that came on. Like that's simple stuff. Like don't make it more complicated. And so
yeah, that's almost frustrating,
Yeah. So marketing automation in some ways like allows you to engineer these gates that you can both understand and guide your customer along that journey, but you can also segment them. And segmentation is the other like really key component to running an effective business, which is to say, what are the 4 buckets that you can fit 80% or more of your audience into? How do they find you? So my friend who was the writer who had the book signing is one of those. If he's doing a lot of those tours, that should be immediately tagged, which the software does. It actually would put a tag said, attended book signing. You can write that in. So now you know everyone who attended the book signing.
Yes.
You just send them a thing that says, hey, thanks for stopping by the book signing. You know that they're there. And then they're like, oh, he remembers me. And it's completely automatically generated.
Are there free softwares for that?
Are they free?
Yeah.
No. I mean, but you pay like $100 a month for Infusionsoft. And if you want, I can give you a little deal.
Yeah.
Because I'm a certified, I went through the certified partnership to get the training, and the training was helpful.
Okay.
Because then I understood like I'm using this entirely the wrong way.
I was about to say like you want to maximize that, and like if you've never done that before, like how long would it take? Like an hour or two to figure it out, or longer?
To figure out the software, I mean, it's a little bit of time. It's not a huge learning curve. Parts of it are. It just depends on how complex you want. There are agencies that just do this. Like I talked to one, and they were fantastic. It was, Full Stack Marketing was the name of the company. Guys were awesome. The guy was like employee number 10 of Infusionsoft,
Nice.
so he knows the.
So do you want me to put your link in the show description?
To those guys?
For your referral link.
Oh, I don't have a referral link for them, but yeah,
okay.
I mean, if you want to reference them, they're great, but they're doing like $10,000 builds. You know? Like if you got 10 grand and you want,
not them. I was talking about you said you're licensed, trained.
Oh, I can see what's there. If that's helpful for people. Yeah. I mean, it'll be like 3 months off or something like that.
Okay.
But they're time bound. So I'll find one that's like enough where you think people would watch it. But yeah, I mean, I don't really care.
Yeah. So no big deal. Yeah.
I get some discounts on my monthly.
Yeah,
because I have the $200 a month deal, so I'd save a little bit of money there, which is nice. But I sell products, so that's why I use the full Infusionsoft. But they have cheaper versions for like if you're a solopreneur, you're a coffee shop, you're an attorney, whatever. Like, but it's great because you can also do the bill pay and other things through it. It's all one piece. But those kinds of tools, I think what I'm interested in and what I wanted to back up briefly and say is a lot of people who have a digital marketing background know this already and are like, yeah, I'm not really in that space. I find better the personal connection, or I find it's easier to, just have a one-on-one. They have some justification for it. My thought is like, it's not about doing it the way other people are doing it and creating a funnel, and like everyone talks about the funnel, and the funnel feels very impersonal. But it's just an analogy to teach you, like, this is basically the concept. You have carte blanche on what you want to do with it. My goal is to create a 90-day onboarding campaign for people that come in so I can educate them about how to run better and more effective learning experiences. So that's the real perk of me doing this process isn't to be like, I'm going to get you to buy. Before you buy from me, you got to understand why I'm different. And if you don't understand how I'm different, then you're going to call me a videographer. And I hate that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't describe like the unique thing that we're actually doing. And it means I haven't sold them on what my unique value prop is. So this is the way to do that. And in the meantime, they get all of my information in bite-sized chunks over 90 days. That's a really great way to say, you don't know me from Adam, and here's a bunch of free information that will actually change your life and the way that you run your programs. So I'm looking to do more of that kind of stuff with it, but automation's that campaign where any person that signs in, so on a Monday, James signs up for a little checklist of 5 toxic traits of a organization, see if you have them, or 10 ways to improve your learning, whatever the thing is that they get.
Those are called lead magnets, right?
Lead magnets, yeah. Once they get the lead magnet, then James is going through this. By the time he's like, a week or two in, Marcia comes in and she signs up. Well, she starts at the very beginning of the chain and goes all the way through the 90 days. That's really powerful because it means all of them eventually end up standardized at a certain point. If you're a small business owner and you just want a simplified thing, do the lily pads, have a 7-step, 9-step, whatever step program, and then think of the increments that would guide somebody naturally to the conclusion. And once they're done, give them the fear email, which is basically, hey, I'm signing off. I'm assuming that you have something wrong, or this is not for you, or you haven't interacted, and I'm not just here to be, screaming into an empty inbox. And that kind of thing prompts them to make a decision.
Yeah.
But at the end of a 9-step program, if they're not purchasing, then you're like, yeah, get out of my box.
You can help filter. You can take those psychographs of those people. Well, Facebook helps with that. And also, if people are opening your emails and not doing anything, or not opening your emails, Google looks at that. Like, there's a certain percentage. Like, if you pass this certain percentage of people who you send emails to aren't even opening them, they'll start putting you in the spam folder.
Yeah.
Or even worse, the promotions folder.
Right. So that's basically why you want to get them. You don't want to get rid of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Either confirm them. So the software that at least I can speak to, Infusionsoft. I know HubSpot's another one that's decent, but their pricing's really weird. It's like $35 a month, but it gives you like no tools, and then it's $8,000 a month, and there's no in between.
Oh wow.
So that's why I like Keep / Infusionsoft. But
Okay.
The benefit of like how you drop those little modules is really easy. I think that when people hear things like Facebook Pixels, like I installed it, and it's like more time that I need to invest, and so it's this. I think what I'm getting at is that there's a happy medium and a balance for what you should be doing on the ground. Like, should you be building your own website? And yes, it's sweat equity, and that's what you're paying, and
sure.
cash is limited, but there's
if
a
you
point
have
at
the
which,
money, like after the sweat equity, hire a team for the Pixel stuff. Hire a team, or have that software. You can even hire people to manage that software.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I'm like, I think it's really beneficial for people to map out like the biggest priorities, and then do the things where they can. Like, I mean, I paid for stuff through Fiverr that was excellent, and just getting people to help out with small things. The time it takes me even to do the research into something, I'm losing money. I need to be out there innovating, coming up with new solutions, meeting new people, and educating them on where this learning trajectory is going.
Al, I'm gonna restart this one more time, and then we'll probably start wrapping up here.
All right,
soon.
man, sounds good. All right. All right. Where do you want to go?
Oh shoot. I think I did want to kind of talk about some of the challenges that you've had to overcome. There's some crazy battle stories that you've had, like a set from hell, or a client from hell, or.
Yeah, so set life has always been a joy for me.
Okay.
I hate to sound like spoiled, but drama and stress in that kind of context,
okay.
Oh my God, dude, I love it. Like, I remember, like, there are people I've worked with for a long time that fold under that pressure. No, I'm like, it's the creative energy.
I thrive in chaos.
Oh my God, absolutely do. So nothing wrong from set. I have some interesting set stories, but I'd say a client frustrations. I mean, some of the things, well, 2 right now that I'm dealing with, I've been selling these guided clarity sessions as a low cost, low risk entry point into what we do. It's $15,000. It's a day long session, and within a week we deliver the strategy. The strategy is what's wrong with your organization, how to fix it, what are the learning objectives that will get there, what is the technology that you should integrate, and the name of it, the websites, the whole thing, what story elements should be included in the learning, what the overall curriculum should look like, the budget for the project itself, and the timeline that's conservative. Like, we're spot on.
What about ROI? Do you discuss
So
that?
yeah, it depends on what their actual, I mean, that's built into the learning objectives.
Oh yeah,
because it'll be the actual like Kirkpatrick kind of breakdown.
Because some ROIs aren't like monetary. I mean, aren't money.
Exactly. So it'll be like, and it depends on what their actual objective is, but that comes out of the deep dive session. I'm trying to actively sell one of those right now, and I thought it was good. The person was like, yeah, we're ready to go. Send an invoice, and was like, cool, pay this, and then I'll send you the link to schedule it with your stakeholders. And I've got a call today where I'm like, they want to see samples of stuff, where I'm like, samples of what? So we send them samples of our work to be like, oh, you just want to vet us. And they're like, yeah, that's great. It looks awesome, great quality, but that particular look won't really fly with what our brand is. So like, do you have anything that's exactly on our brand? And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like, no, because your brand is unique and I haven't worked with you yet. Like, I'm not sending you samples of someone else's company to give you an idea of what I'm going to produce after we've done a discovery.
That's something I've run into a lot.
Dude,
People,
it drives me crazy.
That's why I was like, that's why I'm kind of like, when someone asks for examples, it's like, you got to understand that your video is not going to look like this. I mean, it might, I don't know, but like we have to determine that.
Yeah. So usually to me, it's a sign of fear, which is like, that all comes back to me. I mean, anytime there's like a sales snafu,
any objective is just unanswered questions.
Yeah. Well, and also just that like if they are objecting, I haven't done the groundwork up front.
For sure.
But it's a little confusing where, you're trying to, it's like you have to hit people in the exact right time in the right place, which is why the sales cycle is so dragged out because, I'd say there are a handful of clients I've had where we've had very close calls to working together, and then it like fades off, and then another initiative comes up and it fades off. And just like that kind of, switching my pay model to upfront was the best thing I ever did in my entire life.
It's a huge qualifying form.
Because it also gets people to do the work, because I think what happens is they would love to deliberate and talk about doing the work. And I'm just like, let's get it done. Most of the initiatives for people doing the training stuff that we do will take 6 to 9 months. We can have a film done in a month.
Okay.
So it's 1/6 of the time at least. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And so, and honestly, some of them, and we've done some gigs for Microsoft that we were done in 2 weeks. This was like 3 countries, 8 cities.
Oh, wow.
Done, shot, cut, delivered, 2 weeks.
You were flume.
I mean, the thing is, but a lot of that, the reason it works like that is because we've preemptively envisioned it. We don't have cuts. We don't do editing, like revisions, because there's no need. And
also, I mean, editing's a lot smoother when you have everything planned out.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then they get the product, they're like, oh, wow, it's way better than I expected. And there's like no revisions because it's like, well, what would be wrong with it? The thing of like,
you work that out.
Yeah, you just like everything, every detail is planned. So we front load that. That's the main thing, is just, I think, trying to get people to understand that when you do things differently, I mean, some of the clients that we've worked with, they'll say outright, like, this is not how any other video vendor we've worked with does it. It's like, good. That means we're on to something.
Yeah.
Not to disparage the video vendors, but you guys got to change the way you're doing it. Like doing net 60, net 90 for your payment. Come on, man. Like you're fronting a bill for a multi-billion-dollar a year company. Don't do that. And so little things like that, or they pitch for free. That's the thing I wish would go away.
Okay.
Because it's always like the first most obvious thing. So then when you shoot it, you got the gig, you get in. It's not that fun. You're not able to sit around and be like, it'd be cool. What if we did this? Like, you're just trying to get the gig, and you can't ever take that hat off and be like, oh yeah, let me think about what would be inspiring and fun to watch. And that's the real thing with the training films is imagine a training film that you would really enjoy. That would be like, that's awesome.
What happens if someone pays for the pitch and doesn't want to move forward?
Oh, that's happened before too. Okay. Yeah. I mean, because I'm not there to be like, you have to do business with me. I'm there to say your problem's expensive and here's how expensive. Yeah. There was a construction for a massive company. And they had a huge change management program they wanted. And when we did the assessment, it was like the greatest thing that they'd ever seen. And they paid for this to be done up front. And we were competing with like, $500 million a year companies, and we're a boutique firm. So it was great to win that. But then when we were done, we said, well, this is going to cost you $930,000 to do this. They had paid $1.1 million to do the initial change management, which was only like 80 PowerPoint slides. It's terrible. And so they were doing globally. They were flying all these people in. So same thing you said with Microsoft, right? So
they paid $1 million for that?
They paid him $1.1 million.
Oh, damn.
84 slides on change management. And it was terrible.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I always wonder why that stuff costs so much. Like when Gary Vaynerchuk said that he put together like this deck that's like 50 different like slides and stuff like that, and he said he's invested over like $100,000 in that, or like some big amount. I always wondered how though, what went into that.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit misleading. And a lot of this was also like airfare to get people into the training and. I think he's there to agitate. So I think part of it is to say that, don't skimp on your marketing materials. But, if you're hiring a designer to do it, 50 slides is a lot. Like, why do you need 50 slides? Like your presentation must be like 10 hours long. Yeah. Because it doesn't need to be 50 slides.
Well, it wasn't a presentation. It was kind of just teaching people how to create like a bunch of content a day.
Okay. Yeah. But the client that they said, well, do you have a cheaper version? Like, you're giving us the Cadillac. Do you have like the Hyundai version? That's not $930,000. And the answer was, no, you misheard me. This is what it costs to fix your problem. If you don't spend this, you can spend whatever money you want at whatever increments, but your problem's going to pervade. If you want to fix the change management issue, I mean, you have 50,000 employees across the globe. Do you want to fix this? It's going to cost you almost $1 million. That, to me, that is cheap. That's unbelievably cheap.
For sure.
But
because
them,
you know the numbers and you understand the logistics.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a client that had like a $100 million.
It'd probably be a headache at that rate for you.
Yeah. Well, and so I'm like, I should be charging more. But I mean, these are very expensive problems. And so for them to not move forward was like, cool, now you know. I didn't mind them not moving forward. Again, if you're dealing with a toxic culture, they don't really want to fix it. Like sometimes, and there are government agencies I'm talking to now that they complain about how toxic it is. And you say, well, what can we do? And they're like, nothing, just nothing. We just want to.
They're not in the right mindset. I mean, that's
And so you have to like get them away enough so that they see the light. But you as the consultant walking in are like, oh, this is easy. I've seen dozens of these. This is an easy fix. They don't believe it. It's someone who's been having the runaround for so long. It's like, you're trying to lose 40, 50 pounds and you've been to trainers up and down the state and everyone tells you the same thing. And you're like, I'm frustrated. I work out 2 hours a day and I'm still gaining weight. And then someone says, oh, have you tried eating fat in the morning? First thing, hour after you wake up, and like, what are you talking about? You crazy? Yeah. Like, no, try it. Like, and you'll drop weight like immediately. Like, I don't understand this. It completely boggles the mind. But then you do it and you're like, oh, I've never felt so amazing. Yeah. It's that kind of shift. And that's a really difficult challenge for us is like, it's so out of left field. And even conservative clients, like they buy it, but they're scared. I think we have enough of a track record and we have enough evidence after the deep dive. That's why I did the deep dive at $15,000 because like it's enough money for somebody to make an investment.
So the deep dive isn't the pitch, or
it's the discovery that then results in a pitch.
Okay.
I don't do the pitch immediately.
Oh, okay.
I don't know enough about their problem. I have to talk to their people. I have to visit the field. I have to like see what's going on. It's like this one guy compared it to, we gave him a budget and he's like, you want me to build a house and I don't even know what it looks like. And it's like, yeah, I need to go to your land.
Do you think I should do like a 10% charge to even get in the strategy session?
I absolutely think people should pay for discovery calls. Because the thing is, like, what I was saying is $15,000 is enough money for me to qualify if someone is large enough to actually have a significant change in their organization. And also, it's low enough to be like, this is nothing. Like, for me to throw $15,000 at this guy to get an answer, even if it's a crap answer, and it isn't. It's always something.
And you're talking with big companies, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking with people that are like, they're Fortune 1000.
Because $15,000 could probably, swamp a lot of small businesses. That would be like put them out of business if they did that.
It depends. I mean, I don't know, man. I think if you can't spend $15,000 to get a strategy even for marketing for your business, then you're in the wrong industry. It's like people that say I can't afford to pay my people more. Then you haven't allocated resources. Well,
I'm talking about like a business that only brings in like, $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year.
Yeah, sure.
Like a small business, like a really small one.
I'm talking like, 350 a year or under $1 million, but,
for sure.
But above 100,000. Yeah, for sure. I think, because it's like 5 to 7%.
Yeah. Cause if you're bringing in like 200,000 to like, or anything more than that, like 15,000 is definitely something that you should be investing back into your business. Yeah. Like,
for sure. And I've been trying to like do other things. Like I played around in that space for a little bit. I don't know if it was really valuable. I was doing like a $3,500 2-hour phone call. And it was the same kind of thing of like, okay, by the time you're done, you map, this is what you do. This is your brand story. These are the things you perpetuate. And it's formulaic, but it's organic, meaning it's consistent, but it's systematized. It's not, one size fits all. And I think that's the problem of like trying to manage that in this space. A lot of people who are doing consultancy in this way have a template and they just go through and it's literally a questionnaire that they're asking. And I think some clients get afraid of that. So we have to like tell them, no, this is custom to yours, which is why the statement of please give me a sample of what it's going to look like is so frustrating where I'm like, dude, I get it. I mean, I'm not, I'd be like, well, show me how your hospital differs from every other hospital. It'd be like, what are you talking? Like, one
thing I think of is, like I remember when I had to sell this product that I'm selling before I even did it for a client, and I still sold it, because I did it for myself, and I have had mentors who had proven it, and like I knew it was like legit, and I was able to bring that energy and bring that confidence And like that's a lot of the trust factor right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Trust is huge. Yeah. Yeah. It's and I think like the charisma or chemistry interview is like a really big part.
Chemistry, yes, 100%. Yeah. So is there anything you wanted to specifically promote on this podcast?
Not really. I mean, beyond just like I was hoping that people would all go through and at some point actually write down the customer journey for themselves, like draw it out. If it doesn't work to write it, like do different versions of it. Some of the books I recommended I think are valuable. Ask by Ryan Levesque was one I read recently that I really enjoyed.
Okay.
Infusionsoft Mastery was another one that talks about the marketing automation using Infusionsoft.
It teaches you the fundamentals.
It's not very technical, but it teaches you like the strategy, which I think is really important to see what's possible where you're like, oh my God, this is great. Even if you're not using Infusionsoft, and then to get some kind of marketing automation tool, because once you use it, again, it's like having another one of you duplicated or multiple versions of that where you're communicating with people and you're not having to have hands-on, but it feels like it's hands-on because you can still
turning yourself into Tony Stark essentially.
Yeah. But I think the thing with Tony Stark is like all the technology he has is still colloquial. And I think sometimes business owners have a tendency to like make it more proper. Like, oh, my email news blast, I can't have personality. It's like, I mean, they're buying you. If you're depending on, if there are business sides that's making $50,000 to $100,000 a year, then they're buying you. Nothing you do is like so out there that they can't have it replicated by somebody else. In that case, they want whatever special sauce is that you bring, and so defining that is like a really important part. But I think that the automation aspect will free you up as a business owner to not be running around because busyness is not business, and I'm seeing way too much of that.
I can't wait to really start implementing some automation, some CRMs. I've been putting some research a little bit on it, and doing this podcast, just talking to business owners. It's every day, and like half of them are saying this. It's like maybe I should.
Yeah, and it depends on I'm mostly accounts based sales, so like I'll just target United Airlines or something, and like I try to get in with the multiple people there, so that account is being won. But a lot of businesses are more like individual. They're like these personal, customer centric. So you have a different relationship, which is like I have Bob in my CRM. I know Bob. And if you're a pet food store, you want to know does Bob own a cat or a dog? Because whatever promotions you sell him are really helpful. So if you send him a cat toy discount and he's got a dog, it's really a huge faux pas. But the marketing automation allows you to pinpoint that and to remind him of things. Like it adds a level of hands-on customer service that you can't get unless you're like, that's your sole job is devoted to managing all those people. For sure. And it can't be.
And you didn't get in business most likely to do that.
No, I mean, you want to improve people's lives and service them in the way that makes them happy. But the way to do that is to use this tool to say, oh, if I could remember their birthdays and send them a little something special, it means so much more to them. And so this is obvious stuff, but I guess like the encouragement of reading those other books is like, you can really start to think more inventive, around more inventively around like what is possible. Like, could you? I don't know your listeners, but depending on what their business sector
it's a growing audience.
Yeah. Well, and so it depends on like if you're a fitness gym or if you're like a like I said, a pet food store or something, you're going to have very different objectives, but you can still use the same tool in unique and inspiring ways.
For sure. And some really complex ways too. Yeah. Well, all right. I guess we could start wrapping up this episode of the Colorado Springs Business Podcast. This has been Richard Fleming over here. And is it Fleming? Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
All right. I always want to make sure, usually like to make sure before I just throw it out there like that.
Like just keep it simple.
Yeah. But I'm Andrew Hasley, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yep.